The state of Nigerian roads have always been a conversation that will always be relevant due to the deplorable conditions. It is common knowledge that Nigerian roads are generally either in a state of disrepair, poorly maintained, or altogether untarred. As a result of poor maintenance and low-quality materials used for repairs, the condition of roads is deteriorating. Traveling is very difficult and sometimes almost impossible in many areas on secondary roads during the rainy season due to potholes and erosion on uneven surfaces. The Nigeria Institute of Highway and Transportation Engineers has fine-tuned solutions to the problem of bad roads in Nigeria. Speaking to journalists at the end of the 4-day training workshop on managing road infrastructure assets in collaboration with the International Road Federation, the national chairman, Engineer Saidu Hassan, tasks on engineers to operate within the ethical standard of the profession in ensuring that road projects are executed within the specifications. Well, joining us on the morning show this morning to discuss the state of Nigerian roads, solutions to fix the problem, and the quality of materials used for construction is Engineer Felix Atume, who is the former Registrar of the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. Mr. Atume, thank you so much for being here on the morning show. Well, if we go straight into it, based on your experience, when we look at how severe, the issue of poor road quality in Nigeria is, and the impact that it has on the country's infrastructure and economy, could you elaborate on what you believe are the specific challenges that engineers face in ensuring that road projects are executed, first off, within specifications, especially when it comes to the quality of materials used for constructions? What are the root causes of this frequent use of low-quality materials in Nigerian road construction, and how can it be effectively addressed? When we look at regulatory bodies like COREN that ensure that engineers should adhere strictly to these standards, particularly in the context of road construction, to guarantee the use of high-quality materials. With your experience, what's your take on this, Mr. Atume?
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. The EC of the road network in Nigeria today is a disaster. Road network promotes economic development. Any nation that is talking about development must consider its transportation system, and the road network comes top. In Nigeria today, the situation is simply a disaster. Any part of the country, if moved from Ibadan to Lagos, Ibadan to Ife, Warri to Benin, virtually everywhere, Okene to Benin, the situation is simply terrible. The main reason is that in the early 80s, Nigeria had the best network of roads. These roads were allowed to deteriorate without maintenance intervention. And today, most of the roads, about over 60%, or I can say 90% of the roads will require total reconstruction. And that requires huge resources. And unfortunately, we are still dealing with the old methods of road development, that is looking at only the budgetary provision for road maintenance. No matter how well a road is designed and constructed, if there are no maintenance strategies in place over the design life of the road will go bad. And that is the situation we have in the country today. There must be a paradigm shift. We must look at better ways of managing our roads. And that requires a total reform in the road sector.
All right, Engineer Atume, you were right about how bad things are. And I'm sure you know, of course, that Nigeria has close to 200,000 kilometers of road in totality. World Bank and every other agencies in Nigeria agree that about 87% of those roads are bad and not motorable. Many people will argue that a majority of such roads are in the southern part of the country. I'd like to know what your thoughts are, especially from the angle of COREN, as to what can be done. We know what the problems are. We have even heard from the lawmakers saying that the reason why they're asking for SUVs is because the roads are bad. They are not talking about fixing the road or investing money in having Nigerian-made vehicles, SUVs they may be, but they say, let's go to Japan and bring in Prado cars so that we can do our job better because the roads are bad. What do you think can be done? It's a new government, and I believe that they are interested in listening to quality advice. What will you say to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu or the Minister of Works, who was the governor in Ebonyi State and who's believed to have done very well there?
Well, thank you very much. The issue of the National Assembly thinking about solving the problem of the movement by buying vehicles is a different story that I may not be able to handle here. But basically, if we are going to maintain and keep our roads motorable, there are new strategies that we have to adopt. Number one, today we depend on the budgetary allocation. The Federal Ministry of Works looks at the envelope. This year, this is how much money will be given to them. And there are so many roads. You talk about the 200,000 kilometers. About 40% of that belongs to the federal government and the key arterial roads. The budget is not enough. The next option is, let's look at the private sector. How can the private sector come into the road development? The private sector can come only into road development if there's a reform in the sector. The private sector comes in through public-private partnership. In Nigeria today, there's no successful public-private partnership on roads because the environment is not right. It requires the government and it requires the federal government as a matter of urgency to look at the reforms in the road sector to attract the private sector. For example, the road from Lagos to Ibadan is a candidate for public-private partnership. The road from Enugu to Onitsha, Enugu to Port Harcourt, Abuja to Lokoja are candidates for public-private partnership, including the Abuja-Kaduna, Zaria-Kano. Why would the federal government invest money, billions, to construct these roads? It is because the private sector is unwilling at the moment to come into the road, invest in the road development. And until the environment is right for the private sector to come in, government will continue to depend on the budget, and the budget is not enough. The president must move fast to carry out, to listen to professionals and bring about the reform in the road sector, to bring in the private sector. The Lekki concession was a success, but due to political problems, it was abandoned and the Lagos State government had to come and buy it over again. But that was the way to go, and that is the way to go now.
All right, then, when you talk about the budget not being enough, and we look at the World Bank's country director highlighting the fiscal affordability issue in tackling Nigeria's road problems, in your view, what long-term financial strategies can the government adopt to fund road construction and manage these projects appropriately? And then when we also speak to even introducing technology in relation to data-driven approaches to be utilized in road maintenance and construction to enhance efficiency and ensure the longevity of infrastructure projects, you've spoken about maintenance. Adopting technology for these maintenance and looking at long-term financial affordability when it comes to fiscal affordability issues in Nigeria. What are your thoughts on that?
Perfect. Let's look at the long-term financing. Let's look at the sustainable financing of roads in Nigeria. The sustainable financing of roads is to introduce the road funds. The road fund basically provides funds from tolling, from fuel levy, from motor licensing, from custom excise duty. This money is pooled together for maintenance. And once you have that, it becomes maintenance on a sustainable basis. Today, if there is a small pothole on a road, the controller of works or the man in charge of FEMA will apply through a long process to get resources to fix that pothole. And the deterioration matrix of the road goes on and the road becomes completely impassable. So when we talk about sustainable financing of roads, we have to look at the road funds, which is what is applicable everywhere in the world now, where you have a good roads. If you go to Highway England, that is what they do. If you go to the US, it's the same thing. And here in South Africa, many parts of Africa, it's the same thing. They have developed the road funds where they can get money or funds on a sustainable basis. As I said earlier, in Nigeria today, you have to wait for the budget. Then you talk about construction methods. I must confess that we have developed expertise in Nigeria on flexible pavements. And that is quite clear to everybody. The Federal Ministry of Works has design manuals that can be used to have very good roads. And in the past, as I said, in the late 70s and the early 80s, Nigeria had the best network of roads in sub-Saharan Africa. These good, huge investments were allowed to deteriorate without intervention. And today, it appears as if we cannot get good roads again. It is not true. We can still have very good roads when we now reform the road sector, get the Federal Road Authority to be working properly, and then give incentives to the stakeholders in road development.
All right, Engineer, I understand the issues around highways and truncate roads as far as, the sort of PPP arrangement that you suggested, are concerned and why they may not have done enough. But then many Nigerians, or most Nigerians actually encounter bad roads within their local government areas and, of course, within the state. Lagos had experimented in the past, Lagos State, with the idea of having the private sector, which of course will include churches, for example, and private organizations, adopting a road for reconstruction and then getting tax breaks. It worked a bit in Lagos. Do you think that that's something that can be replicated in other parts of Nigeria as far as roads belonging to local government and states are concerned?
Well, thank you very much for that question. Of the 200,000 kilometers of road network in Nigeria, only about 30 to 40% belongs to the federal government. The rest are states and local government. In fact, the local governments have a larger proportion of the road network in Nigeria. So any strategy that can be adopted by the local government of the state could be desirable, provided it follows the normal infrastructure procedure. Road construction and road infrastructure generally is believed to be borne by the states or by the governments. When the private sector comes in through maybe tax waivers or the concessions, the people must have to pay. And tax waivers, the tax credit as it is done under Executive Order 7, it is not a public-private partnership. Because it's simply saying that don't pay tax, and the tax is used for education, is used for health, is used for water resources, is used for many other things. So when you say a company should not pay tax and concentrate on road development through tax credit, it is not a public-private partnership. A public-private partnership is when the investor brings in money, invests for a period of 25 years or 30 years, and recovers the money through a process. So if the local government, maybe the state government, decides to go on public-private partnership, they should do it properly. It's not through the tax credit as I see it today, and as we professionals see it.
All right then, Mr. Atume, I'm just looking at a message from a member of FIRMA, someone who used to be on the board of FIRMA, and he's even saying that one of the problems with our roads is corruption in the Ministry of Works, diverting funds meant for roads. Roads ought to be bordered by drainages for runoff water. Most funds for these drainages are diverted. I would like to know what your take is on that first. And when we look at giving the underfunding of agencies like FIRMA, is there a role for public-private partnerships, I mean, like you've duly mentioned, could play in addressing these financial gaps for road maintenance in construction in Nigeria? Because it seems as if no matter what we say, it's still those plowing the roads that are the ones paying the price.
Well, your last statement is very pertinent. The people using the roads are paying the price. If you plow on a bad road, There's what we call the tire consumption, spare parts consumption, engine oil consumption, and your time consumption. So anytime you apply a bad road, the user pays the price. But say, look at the issue of corruption. We hear so much about engineers involved in producing a poor quality of roads. I doubt it. I doubt it. You see, Nigeria had the best network of roads. The roads were supervised by our own engineers. If they're talking about the problem of corruption, it's systemic. It is systemic. It may not be with the Federal Ministry of Works. First, the choice of contractors. Yesterday, I was very happy at the retreat. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation emphasized the issue of transparent procurement. The people sometimes involved in these projects are not qualified. They put even the engineers in very difficult situation to supervise. We should be talking about quality control in construction. And that can be done by the choice, also the choice of good contractors. So as we're talking today, let us go back to the basics. Who are those involved in road construction in the first place? And what is the language? If the minister, the Federal Minister of Works says, we are going to get quality roads, the quality roads will be produced. And in the past, as I said, they have been done. We can still do that. But the situation where you take 2,000 road projects, and at the beginning of the budget, you just spray the resources very thinly. How can you get quality job? It is almost impossible.
All right, Engineer Atume, before...
Fine, let me answer the other part.
Yes, go on, please, go on.
The other part of FEMA getting... the other part of FEMA getting other people to come in to support the road development. I have said it over and over. The private sector cannot invest in a hostile environment. The private sector comes in to put in money to get returns on their investment. If they are not sure of getting back their money, they will not come in. And that is the present situation. People are not confident in bringing in money to invest for 25, 30 years under public-private partnership. Until the framework, the legal framework is right, we will continue to depend on the budget for road development, and we will not get good roads.
All right, Engineer Atume, before we let you go, I would just like your thoughts on the sort of complaints that many people have had over the years, especially when they compare with what is obtainable in terms of, in the building construction industry. The major complaint there is that the National Building Code is yet to be fully adopted, is yet to be a law. That's for building constructions. For road constructions, do we have anything like that, like the National Construction Code that will, clearly outline what is required, the sort of quality control, so that we know if a road fails, this is why it fails, and these are the sanctions. Do we have anything like that for road construction in Nigeria?
A very good question. The Federal Ministry of Works has developed the road design manuals. Very comprehensive document. Very comprehensive document for all types of pavement, flexible and rigid pavement. There are design manuals available by the Federal Ministry of Works. And mind you, the Federal Ministry of Works has been the home of engineering development in the country. The design manuals are there. If properly followed, you can get very good roads, get quality control on all the road construction.
All right, Engineer Atume, we want to thank you for your quality time with us this morning on The Morning Show. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.